The Game, written and narrated by Walton. They both walked into the gun store, bathed in excitement, as this day had been a long time coming. The air conditioning was welcome, as they escaped from the searing heat outside. Wayne walked up to the counter and stared down at the great selection of pistols presented in the illuminated glass cabinets in front of him. A large guy, a very large guy, walked up to the counter. Dark arms with an oversaturation of tattoo ink and a prominent skull and crossbones gracing his neck. He inquired what sort of pistol Wayne was looking for. Wayne replied that he did not have a specific type of pistol on his mind, but they'd always fancied a Colt 45. The assistant smiled as he unlocked the cabinet from the back, pulling out a pristine 45. Wow, all shiny and brand spanking new, and handed it to Wayne. Asked him if it felt comfortable in his hand. As soon as it was in his hand, he gripped it tight, and then, with a little practice and a silly grin on his face, spun it round his finger. It sure was heavy. Jed, only 15, stood well back, looking at nothing in particular. He only came along because Wayne, his elder brother, had insisted so. Wayne mostly got his own way. At the counter, Wayne felt powerful with this beast of a weapon now held in two hands. The assistant watched him carefully, fingers tapping on the counter. His coffee in the back room probably now getting cold. This kid had been toying with the gun for over 15 minutes and not said a word. Just an inane grin on his face. Finally, Wayne had made up his mind and asked the price. The assistant checked the label and advised that it would be $1,150. If Wayne wanted a warranty, then that would be another $156 extra, but for a 3-year fully inclusive cover. Wayne grinned, that Wayne-y grin, and said he would take it, pulled out a stash of $150 bills and passed them to the assistant. Wayne noticed that the assistant was putting the Colt into a box and then into a bag. Wayne wanted to stuff the gun inside his jeans, but the assistant advised that it was federal law that the gun had to be boxed and in a bag before it could be taken out of the shop. Wayne then realized he'd not bought any ammo and purchased 2 boxes of the right stuff and put this as well into the bag. They left the shop. Driving back home, Jed was filled with excitement at the thought of being able to have a couple of shots with this magnificent machine Wayne had promised. As soon as they got back, Wayne took out his newly acquired treasure out of the box, and knowing that hereinafter he could be the boss whenever he chose. That was his rather cruel streak that ran through him, passed on from earlier generations, and actually something he could do nothing about. He loaded 2 bullets into the chamber and passed the gun to Jed and invited him to go out and have a couple of shots, as promised. The gun was placed into Jed's trembling hand. He was wild-eyed as he walked out of the kitchen and into the garden, eyes keenly looking for a target. He soon found something. An old rusty petrol can peppered with holes. He aimed straight down the line and fired. What happened then was a complete surprise, A millisecond after the percussion, he was thrown backwards, the force so strong against his small body. In the kitchen, Wayne was watching, doubled up with laughter, as the same thing happened again. Jed winced in embarrassment as he walked back inside. Wayne felt powerful as he knew exactly how to discharge the weapon. He loaded the chamber with 6 bullets and strode out into the garden like a real cowboy. 2 pigeons were settled on the shed roof. He stood still and with the gun in both hands, legs apart, he fired. The first bullet hit the bird square on in the chest, and it literally blew apart with the force of the impact. The next shot, before the second bird could flee, took the bird's head off as the body flapped, its wings falling to the ground. Jed, watching on, was in awe of his brother's skill. This sure was a powerful gun. They both sauntered back into the kitchen and out of the hot sun. Wayne, feeling like a real man, pulled out a half-full bottle of bourbon. 2 glasses, both now full. Down in one was the theme. This repeated until the bottle was empty. They were both laughing and giggling as they looked at the gun on the table in front of them. Eventually, Wayne suggested a game, a new and exciting game. He'd seen it in films over the years. Now, what was it called? Ah, yes, Rusky Roulette. Jed was curious. He had not heard of this expression before. Wayne explained that the game consisted of 1 bullet being placed in the chamber and spun several times. Nobody could determine the position of the bullet. Then the nozzle of the gun placed beside the temple of the head, and when the player was ready, then the trigger pulled. Wayne looked at Jed and indicated that he could have the first go. How kind of him. The odds were good, so no need to worry. Jed, trembling, picked up the Colt and placed it to the side of his head. He looked at Wayne, who nodded for him to go ahead. His finger found the trigger, and with an almighty amount of willpower, he pulled it hard. Click! No bullet in that one. So relieved was Jed that he started to giggle. The nervous energy had to come out somewhere. Wayne picked up the gun with an air of authority. The only thing missing was a cowboy hat. He downed the last dregs of the bourbon and placed it to the side of his head, knowing he was a lucky person. He would only have to do this once to prove how brave he was. He pulled hard at the trigger and knew nothing more. His brains splattered across the kitchen wall. Yes, he only had to do this once. Jed wailed at the sight of his brother slumped over the table, and himself covered in blood and grey matter that had splattered back from the wall with the force of the explosion. Wayne's eyes were open, looking up at him, expressionless.